Hi guys. So I know I haven't been on YouTube in quite a while. Probably since like not the beginning, but maybe like the middle to late May. And now we are at, today is July 23rd, I believe. Yes, July 23rd. If you don't follow me on Instagram, then you probably wouldn't know, but my dad passed away, and this is a video that I have been putting off and like being anxious about since a couple days after it happened, just because I knew that I would have to make this sort of video so that you guys kind of knew what was going on and we could all kind of be on the same page. So he died on May 31st at 10:15 p.m. and that was the worst day of my life, hands down, and probably will remain the worst day of my life for the rest of my life. Oh, I'm like so all over the place, so I'm so sorry. Also, if I don't really know how, like, I've been really trying to process my emotions. So right now I'm in a place where I'm not gonna say that I'm at peace with what happened, but I had to find some sort of peace with what happened because it's something that I can't control and I can't change. And in order to continue living in this world, I have to find some sort of peace. So I'm gonna try my best not to get emotional. I'm kind of separating this video from my emotions, if that makes sense. I kind of have to detach because every time I talk about it, it's kind of just like reliving the situation. And so it's easier for me to detach my feelings a little bit from this video and kind of just make it more, I don't know. I'm just trying my best. So let's start off with the beginning. I'm gonna try my best to be as thorough and detail-oriented. I mean, detail-oriented, I don't really know if you guys need all the details, but like, I just want you guys to like completely understand what happened and not have any confusion or questions, because once I talk about this, I don't want to relive it again. And so like once I say what I have to say, I really don't want questions in the comment section. I don't want anything like that, just because I said what I said and I said my piece about it kind of, and I kind of just want to try to get back to some sort of normality. So yes, he passed away on May 31st at 10:15 p.m. That was a Sunday that he passed away. So Saturday was a normal Saturday. I have been doing my own polygel nails for, well, that was my first time doing it, May 30th. And so it took me hours and hours and hours. I've been just doing it now by myself, but like, and I've gotten better, of course, but that was like my first time doing it, so it took me hours. So that day, I started doing my nails early in the day, probably around like, I don't know, noon. And by 4 o'clock, I was still doing them. And my brother, I think, was at his girlfriend's house. Dan was at his house working on his car or something like that. So I kind of was just like here by myself, hanging out, having like a little me day, doing my nails. And something just told me like, hey, check in on your dad. Because like the last time that I heard from him was the Thursday prior when he stopped by my apartment with my mom. Michelle was here. We were, she was showing me how to sew, teaching me how to sew and things like that. And my parents just stopped over to say hi. That was the last time that I physically saw him in person, alive. So back to May 30th, the Saturday, it's like 4 o'clock. I'm just sitting there still doing my nails and I'm like, you know what? I haven't talked to my dad in like a couple days. Let me give him a call. So I FaceTime him and he didn't pick up the first time. And then the second time he picked up, and he had picked up, so oh God, it's gonna be all over the place. Anyways, his favorite like restaurant, Portofino, he'd become really, really close with like the owners and everything. And you guys know my dad used to own a restaurant. And so they asked him if he would work in the kitchen, like making pizzas on Fridays and Saturdays, because of quarantine, the restaurant had like a really big deal going on. It was like, I don't really know what the deal was, it doesn't really matter, but they had a really big deal. And so they were getting like an influx of people ordering pizzas, and it was just the two of them, the two owners that worked in the kitchen basically. Like one was like the host and one was in the back in the kitchen. I don't know if you're following, but anyway, so my dad was like, oh yeah, of course. Like my dad was always willing to help anybody who ever needed him. Always. Like he would help anybody with anything, no matter what time of day it was, no matter like how big a task. So he of course said yes. So I called him and he didn't pick up the first time because he was working obviously. And then he called me back a couple minutes later and I was just like, hey, like what's going on? What are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just working. What are you up to? And I'm like, oh, I'm just doing my nails. Like we just had like a normal conversation. And then he was like, are you gonna go to grandma's tomorrow? Or am I gonna see you at grandma's tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, because it was my grandpa's 70th birthday. Coming up, his birthday's June 4th, so they were gonna celebrate it on the 31st just because it was a Sunday and everybody would be home. So my dad was like, am I gonna see you at grandma's tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And he's like, okay, great, like can't wait to see you. I'm like, all right, cool, like just checking in on you. I'll see you later. I love you, bye. And he's like, all right, great, like love you too, bye. That was the last time I ever talked to my dad. That's the last time I ever heard his voice alive. And so, you know, obviously I didn't think anything of it. My mom ended up coming over because she was home. My dad was working, of course, so she came over. We ended up ordering food from Portofino and my dad paid for it, which was really sweet. My dad always just did like really nice things like that. And my mom came over, we shared a meal, like shared a dinner, and she went home. And it was like 9:30. I kept doing my nails. And when I tell you that I did this from literally 1 or 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 3:30 in the morning, that's how long it took me to do all of my nails with polygel the first time. So it took me forever. So that's what I was doing. I was up super late till like 3:30 in the morning. I was so tired. I left all of my stuff here on this table. Like I didn't even clean up, which is not like me at all. You guys know I don't like clutter or anything like that. So I left all my stuff on the table and was just like, I'll deal with it in the morning. I fell asleep around 3:45, somewhere around there. And then I wake up to a phone call from my aunt. My aunt was calling me and I was like, that's weird. But I didn't realize like what time it was. In my head, I felt like it was like 9 in the morning. And so I answered it and she's like, hey, like, what are you doing? Your mom needs you. Something happened to dad. Like we need to get there immediately. And so she's like, I'm outside your house. And I was like, you're outside my house right now? She's like, yeah. So then as soon as I hung up with her, I looked at my phone and I had 40 missed calls from my mom and text messages. And like, my stomach sank because I just knew something was wrong. Of course, like something serious. And then I didn't even realize the time, but it was like 4:50 in the morning. So I had just fallen asleep. Like I had been asleep for maybe half an hour. So of course I opened the door, my aunt came in, I threw on a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt and we ran over there. As we were going there, the ambulance was leaving. Like we passed the ambulance. As I pulled down my street, the ambulance was like pulling up the street to go to the hospital. And I get there and I'm like, what happened? What happened? What happened? And my mom said that my dad got up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water, get a snack. This is something that he always did. Like my dad was somebody who would eat in the middle of the night, which just sounds so weird, but like there's sleepwalkers and like I swear to God, he wasn't a sleepwalker, but he was a sleep eater. Like he would wake up in the middle of the night and like grab ice cream and like take it back to the bed, the whole half gallon, and like my mom would find him in the morning with like chocolate all down his chest and like all over the sheets and peanut butter and whatever. This is something that he did often. So my mom said like he got up in the middle of the night. She didn't think, like she didn't hear anything. He just got up in the middle of the night and she woke up a couple of minutes later to a groaning sound. And she thought my dad was throwing up, like getting sick. And so she like didn't rush into the bathroom, but she was just like kind of awake, like listening to make sure he was okay. And when the noise didn't stop and she kind of came to a little bit more, she realized like he is not getting sick, something's wrong. And so she couldn't find him. She thought he was in the bathroom. He wasn't in the bathroom. She went into the kitchen and he was laying on the kitchen floor face down. And my mom's like, oh my God, what happened? I'm gonna call an ambulance. And my dad said yes. And then my mom was like, I'm calling Gabriella. And he's like, okay. And then my mom she called 911. She went to go put clothes on because she had her pajamas on. She went to get a robe or whatever. And when she came back, my dad stopped breathing. And when the ambulance got there, they were able to resuscitate him and get his heart beating again. But he never woke up. And my dad had like a cut on his nose and his cheek was a little bit swollen, like over here. And so what had happened was he fell. He must have tripped over something. Like, we have a rug underneath the kitchen sink at my parents' house, and he must have tripped on that and he fell like hard face down. Like, all he did was trip in the middle of the night and he fell to the ground. And the way he hit his head, he blew an artery in his brain and his brain bled out within seconds and swelled up. And he was instantly brain dead. Not instantly, of course, because my mom was able to like talk with him for a few seconds, but it only took like minutes for him to completely like bleed out. I mean, he didn't bleed out like externally. There was no blood on the floor, but it was just internally, like his brain took all the damage, his head took all the damage. And so everybody eventually comes to my mom's house, and everybody's trying to stay positive at first. Like, we didn't really know the situation. We didn't know that he was brain dead right away. Like, we were praying and hoping and like praying that he was gonna wake up and like he was gonna come back. Like, we just thought he passed out or something. And then we get a phone call from, so because of COVID, that's a big thing too. Because of COVID, nobody was allowed to go in the ambulance with my dad or go to the emergency room with him. That's the rules at the hospitals right now, like, or during the time in May. So nobody was allowed in the hospital, like in the ER or in the ambulance with him to go to the hospital. So they told my mom that she could call and like call every half an hour to get updates. So she was calling, getting updates, and at first they didn't have anything to update her. They just said that they were working on him. Like, they did the CT scan, the MRI, they were doing like a full workup and seeing what was going on. And my dad was on blood thinners because if you remember last year, he was really sick. He had a really bad infection in his leg, which he had to have surgery on. And because he was so stable in one position for so long, he ended up getting blood clots that went to his lungs, pulmonary embolisms. And since then, he's been on a blood thinner. Now with blood thinners, of course, you have to go to like a, what is it called? It's called some sort of clinic, INR clinic, I believe, and just have like your levels monitored, because blood thinners can be dangerous, of course. And so he was getting his regular like checkups with that. He was getting all his blood work done, like all his thing. He was literally healthy as a horse. Super, super healthy. All of his blood work was great. Like, his heart was so strong. Like, everything was just, he was in pristine health. Of course, he was overweight. So I'm sure some of you guys are gonna be like, no, he wasn't in pristine health. But as far as his lab work and his organs and everything like that go, he was in pristine health. So because he was on blood thinners, my mom, of course, let them know, let the ambulance know, and the paramedics know like what medication he was on. And so they were able to reverse the blood thinner, but it didn't make any difference because it had already, like, the damage had already been done. But so that's what they were doing in the beginning. Like, when my mom first called, and we called back again, and they said that they were running a pain test. There's some other word for it, but like trying to see if his nerves and muscles and reflexes reacted to pain. Because if you can react to pain, there's still a good chance that some of your brain, I guess, is still functioning. And he wasn't having any reaction. His pupils were both blown. And at that point, they had told us that he was brain dead. And that's when we kind of, I was right next to my mom. My mom started screaming. I collapsed, started screaming, crying. And that's kind of where it went from there. Strangely enough, the ICU doctor was my landlord's husband. So I don't know if he was able to pull some strings. I'm sure he was. He seriously was the most amazing doctor that I have ever met in my entire life. And I've met him, of course, because he's my landlord's husband, but like I didn't know what his occupation was or anything like that. And it was just such a weird coincidence that on the worst day of my life, like, he was able to provide some sort of comfort, because his bedside manner was just amazing. Like, I could not have asked for a better doctor. Anyways, so he was able to pull out some strings. We were able to get into the ER with him. Like, my dad was just on a ventilator. Like, everything was pumping. He was on life support, basically. Everything, he was hooked up to a bunch of machines and had a tube going down his throat and all of that kind of stuff, like a vent, life support. I don't really know if that's a bit, whatever. He was on life support, so all the tubes that go along with that were down his throat. And it was, I couldn't stop hyperventilating. I literally, like, everybody was like really concerned because I physically couldn't stop hyperventilating and just sobbing, like hyperventilating. So my dad to me was everything. Like, me and him have the same heart. Like, I get all of my empathy and my compassion and my sympathy and all of those types of qualities from my dad. Like, he truly had the biggest heart. And that's not to say my mom doesn't either, but my dad just wore his heart on his sleeve. Like I said, would do anything for anybody, stranger, friend, family, no matter who it was, like, would do anything for anyone. And so me and my dad had like a special kind of connection because we were both emotional like that, and able to connect on that level. My dad was my hero. My dad was literally everything to me. I am such a daddy's girl. It was always like me, my dad, and my mom and my brother. Like, you know what I mean? As far as like who could, I don't know. Me and my mom are close, of course, but it was just like, it's just different. Like, me and my dad connected, and my brother and my mom are two peas in a pod. Me and my dad are two peas in a pod. And so, I don't know. I just took it really, 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 really hard. Anyways, so the day kept going on, and, you know, everybody was there. My grandma was there, my grandpa, my dad's two sisters were there. Michelle came because I called her immediately, like at 5 o'clock in the morning. She came right down. Dan was there. Eddie, of course, was there with Ryan, which is his girlfriend. And, so we just kind of like took turns throughout the day going in there. Like I said, nobody else was allowed in the ICU or in the hospital as far as visitors go, but the doctor was able to pull some strings, and because my dad like didn't have a chance of survival, they like let us in there, I guess. I don't really know. But we were able to be in the ICU. It was 2 people at a time in the room with my dad. He of course had his own room, and yeah, I don't really know. I'm kind of rambling at this point, but that's just kind of how the day went. And the doctor at one point came in to the waiting room and said, like, I'm so sorry, but I am getting a lot of slack from the other doctors and nurses because of COVID. Like, we really are not supposed to have visitors, so we're gonna have to ask you to leave and you can come back tomorrow. But he had said, like, if we had anything that we wanted to say to my dad, like, now would be a good time because it doesn't look good. Like, he was brain dead completely and he was on life support completely. But the heart and lungs can only pump for so long once the brain is dead. Of course, like on a machine. And so we all went in there and said our goodbyes. We had a couple of private moments, me, my mom, my brother, and my dad for the last time, like the 4 of us. And we said what we, you know, what we wanted to say. Everybody was just saying that how much they loved him and all that kind of stuff. And then we went home and I took a shower. Everybody went back to my mom's house, and we got a phone call like maybe 2 hours later, saying that his heart had stopped, and they were able to give him a medication to get his heart pumping again, but that if we wanted to let him go as a family, then we need to get back to the hospital immediately. And so we all drove back to the hospital and cried and begged and pleaded with God and prayed and told my dad that it was okay to go because he of course wouldn't want to live like this, and we wouldn't want him to have to struggle and not struggle, but just have to just be alive without being there. Do you know what I mean? Like, he wasn't there anymore. Like, there was 0 chance of him waking up. There was 0 chance of him ever being able to function again. There's 0 chance of him being able to do anything again. He was dead. And that's what the doctor said. The doctor said, to be honest with you, he's dead. His heart's still beating, but he's gone. And so, you know, we had his last rites. We had a pastor come and give him his last rites. And then they turned the machine. My mom told everybody to leave the room because she didn't want us to see them pull the tubes out. So we all left the room for a second. We just stood outside, and then as soon as the tubes were out, my dad was still alive for a few minutes. And so we rushed back in, and I was hugging him. I wouldn't let go. And I had my hand on his heart, and I could still feel it beating. It was beating really slow. I think his pulse was at a 50 at that point. It was beating pretty slow. And then eventually, like a minute or two later, I didn't feel anything anymore. And I watched my dad turn from pink and alive to yellow to gray. And I felt his heart stop beating in my hands. And I wouldn't let go of him. I physically would not let go of him. They had to like pull me off of my dad because I didn't want to let him go. And that's basically what happened. Now, because of COVID, we weren't able to have a funeral home service or a church service for him. And so I did the best that I could and planned a service in the backyard for him. My dad was cremated, and I had a whole program and everything. I picked prayers and songs, and we had a pastor come out to the backyard. We had chairs. It turned out to be beautiful. There was flowers everywhere and candles everywhere, and everything was beautiful. I don't know, it's just something that changes you forever, and it's a pain that you truly don't understand until you have lost a parent, because it's not like anything else. I've lost grandparents before, and I've lost uncles and aunts and cousins, and it's a pain that is indescribable until you go through it. My dad will never get to walk me down the aisle. My dad will never meet my children. And my dad will I'll never get to hug my dad again or do anything like that. And of course I know he's still with me, and I believe in that wholeheartedly, like spiritually, like yes, he is still with me. But physically, earthside, he's not here. And like I said, it's something that you can't understand until you unfortunately go through it. And it's a pain that's so deep in your body. I can feel it in my bones, if that makes sense. Like, and it's something that you think about all day, every day. From the first second that you're awake to the second you go to sleep, it's always on the back of your mind. I think everyone's just kind of trying to do the best that they can, and everyone's trying to find some sort of normality and peace, because like I said, if you don't find some sort of peace within the situation, of course I'm not at peace with the fact that my father's not here. And of course I'm not at peace or okay with the fact that I'll never see him again. But you have to find some sort of peace to be able to physically function every single day. Because if not, the grief and the pain and the sadness will swallow you whole. And my dad would not have wanted that for me. My dad would want me to keep living, keep pursuing my dreams, and keep being happy to the best of my ability. So yeah, that's kind of what's been going on here. Every single day is a different day. Like I have good days and bad days. That's just kind of where I'm at right now. And that's kind of where everybody else is at too. Like my mom and my brother, we're kind of just doing the best that we can. We're having dinner with my mom every single night. And yeah, we actually went on a fishing trip last weekend, and we scattered some of my dad's ashes in the ocean by a lighthouse. And I have some of his ashes in like a little, it's like this silver heart with some gold detailing. It says Daddy on it. And my brother has some as well in a little acorn keepsake. And then we also have a bunch of his ashes left over that we're planning on planting in a tree in the backyard and putting like a bench there with the tree, and just kind of having, you know, life come out of his death as far as like the tree goes. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on with that. I am getting a necklace that has his thumbprint and some of his ashes in it as well, that once I get it, I don't think I'll ever take it off. And yeah, I think I've covered almost everything that there is to cover. I hope that this video wasn't all over the place. I tried my best to kind of stay as relaxed, and I don't want to say emotionless, but I just don't, like I said, I had to kind of detach a little bit, because if not, it's just like entirely too painful. So yes, as far as like content and videos go, I am looking to get back into a routine. I do have some videos that I had previously filmed like in May that still need to go out, because one of them was sponsored and I did have a contract signed. I do need to get that out eventually. And I also have an Old Navy haul that I filmed in May that I'll edit and put out for you guys too. And then I am looking to get back into filming new content and kind of just trying to, I don't want to say move on, but kind of just trying to proceed with life in a new way. Obviously my life is forever changed, and I am forever changed. I don't think I'll ever be the same person I was on May 30th, 2020 that I am now. But it's just, I have to keep living for my dad. So like I said, I don't really want any more questions about this in the comment section. I hope that I explained this to the best of my ability. What happened to my dad was a complete and utter freak accident, and that's all that the ICU doctor could give us as far as why this happened. Your head is a very fragile place, and it doesn't take a lot if you hit it the right way to really do some damage. So like I said, it was just a complete accident, and nobody could have prevented it. Nothing would have changed the outcome of this. So I'm gonna end this video here. I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who did and continues to reach out to me on Instagram. I'm sorry that I have not responded to a lot of your messages. It's kind of just really painful to open all those messages and respond to them, but I truly, truly, truly appreciate and I'm so grateful for every single one of you guys who have sent a message. Some of you guys have even sent flowers for the service, which was like incredible. I even received a keychain from one of you guys. I don't want to say your names or anything or put your information out there, but just know that I really, really appreciate it. And if you guys could extend a prayer to that one person who did send me the keychain, because she recently lost her husband, that would be great. And yeah, just know that I'm still here. I still want to continue doing YouTube. It's just taking a minute to kind of get back in the swing of things. But I'll try my best to return to some sort of normality with this channel. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for sticking by me, sticking with me, and I will talk to you guys very soon. Bye. Thank you.